Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and we've been gone for a while. This summer did not turn out the way that we intended to. We had so many well-laid plans, sort of well-laid plans for the stuff that we wanted to do. We're returning to you now to talk about the early Challenger series of the 2024-25 season. But we meant to be doing a whole bunch of stuff over the course of the summer, and that all just fell apart for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, like in June, I got pneumonia and couldn't speak really or breathe well for at least a month. So that was super fun.
Yeah, then we had a gigantic storm that wrecked our roof and our gutters, and we had to do a big replacement on that, which ended up being just a whole gigantic process that involved people being on top of our house, beating and pounding on stuff, which is not really all that conducive to recording.
No, not helpful. And then on top of that, the water main from the city to our house somehow got damaged, and we had flooding in our yard and had to take care of that. Yeah. Also, additional items of not fun.
Yeah, also expensive and gigantic hassles. And then just lots of other little life stuff that just kind of impeded things. And along the way, we recorded 3 times this summer.
We did.
There are 3 episodes that we recorded that you never heard because every time that we would record, something would happen in our lives that I couldn't get to the process of editing and uploading. And numerous times I was in the process of editing when new news came out that was so significant that it rendered moot half of what we had talked about. And it didn't make sense to release those things anymore.
Right.
And so we just had 3 that just went into the archive because they were kind of useless, because by the time they could have been released, they were no longer relevant.
It's possible that one of them might still be salvaged, maybe, but it's a long shot at this point.
Yeah. So at a certain point, we kind of had to give it all up as a bad job and then just wait until we actually were in a situation where we could get back into things.
Well, and it feels appropriate since it's kind of the start of the season. So welcome back.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff over the summer that we could have talked about that we're going to
We'll trickle in here and there.
Yeah, mostly cruise on by because it's just too much. What we really want to focus on is what we have seen from the early season Challenger series, because this is our first real look at a lot of these new programs, these first competitive outings for a lot of the skaters. There's a lot of people we haven't seen at all yet. And for a lot of them, they're very rough early versions of these programs too. So we're going to be looking at Lombardia Trophy and Nebelhorn and a couple of other little places where people competed.
Cranberry Cup. There's quite a few in there that are mixed up, but Lombardia and Nebelhorn had the most significant, I'd say, results that we want to look at.
So we're not going to focus on a singular competition. We are just going to run through the different disciplines and talk about the skaters that we've seen so far and contextualize them based on how they did at some of these different competitions. We're not worried so much about how people necessarily did within that competition, so much as how they're looking so far this season and what we think we can kind of expect from them going forward based on what we've seen so far.
It's a different format for us, but appreciate you rolling with it.
Sort of like a preseason brain dump, right? Like we just have to kind of cover a lot of different ground. But there's definitely been some real surprises so far early in the season and some really exciting stuff. So I think probably the best place for us to start would be where the women's division is at right now.
I definitely want to start with the women's because so far this season, the U.S. has been killing it, which was very unexpected, at least to me. The first person I want to mention is Amber Glenn, who won the Lombardia Trophy, had an incredible short program. I think it was a personal best with a 75-71. Amazing. But also the program just looked great on her. Mm-hmm. She did her triple axel in both programs, her short and her long. And taking that first competition over a surging Sarah Everhart and Kaori Sakamoto, just to name the other 2 people on the podium, I was so excited.
Amber looked fantastic so far. There was a little bit of trouble, I think, in her free skate.
Yeah, her free skate wasn't perfect.
But still, that free skate seems better designed to keep Amber focused. If there's a problem that we've always seen with her is that she can tend to start programs strong and then seem to kind of mentally fall apart as they go along. And there's something about how this new free skate is constructed that seems like it's designed to keep her in the moment and keep her in the right headspace. So I think that's really promising. I think it's also interesting that we've already seen a number of triple axels either attempted or landed in the preseason from a lot of the women, which is, I think, is really exciting to see that kind of step up. But Amber's looks so strong now. It looks so confident.
A surprise here, elyce-lin Gracie coming in, taking second at Cranberry Cup, but then taking Nebelhorn Trophy with a 2:13.33. That is outstanding, and I think completely blindsided everybody. Not that she hasn't been promising in previous seasons, but man, she looks good so far.
Both of those programs are star makers.
They are.
They're so impressive. I've always liked Elyce. She is a promising skater who didn't turn the lights on the same way as, say, like a Ava Marie Ziegler or Lindsay Thorngren or, you know, and obviously like Isabeau in earlier seasons and stuff. And so seeing her here now, she looks like she has elevated material that she has risen to. And there's still a higher ceiling for the scores that she has. She finished second at Cranberry Cup and then first place at Nebelhorn. Notably, she beat Isabeau Levito at both of those competitions. And we'll talk about Isabeau there because I don't think there's cause to be concerned on that.
No.
It's just that Elyce came out the gate looking really strong. There's definitely space to elevate those scores because she's got some like triple-double combinations where if she can get triples into them, she could definitely raise herself up. But yeah, she looks really, really good so far.
And there's certainly places where she's got space to grow as a skater. Like, I don't feel like, for as beautiful as these programs are, they're not quite hitting her face emotionally, if you will. Like,
yeah,
you don't feel like she's necessarily acting the part yet, but that'll come in time. Really, I was just incredibly impressed. Also coming on strong this season already, Sarah Everhart. And we saw her look incredible last season in U.S. Nationals, but she took the Cranberry Cup and then went on to take second at Lombardia Trophy, and at Lombardia tipped over the 200 mark. So extremely positive results for her to get started in this season. And something about seeing her and Elyce come out swinging made it really start feeling like how deep this U.S. field really is going to be this year.
I think, you know, last year, maybe the year before, there was this sense of there were a lot of fan favorite skaters in America's women's competition, but not a lot of them that felt super competitive. For a while, it felt like, well, we have Isabeau, and then if anybody else shows up on any given day, but we just wouldn't know. Obviously, Amber had a huge glow up last year. Inconsistent, but when she's on, she's incredible. But right towards the end of last season, we were starting to see this emergence of some of these other skaters that we've already kind of mentioned. But Sarah coming out and taking fourth at Nationals last year was definitely a statement for a skater that wasn't super well known on the circuit yet. Considering that she won Cranberry Cup, and then when she took second place at Lombardia, she took it while scoring almost 5 points higher than she had when she won the previous competition.
Yeah.
That's a really nice acceleration for her. She's more of a technical skater, more of a jock than an artistic skater at this point. I mean, if you want to compare her versus elyce-lin Gracie, Elyce definitely has more of that artistic element and Sarah is more of the technician, but there is easily room to grow there. She's a very exciting skater and everything we've seen so far has been really cool.
I also have to give credit to her team because Sarah, for not being a very artistic skater yet, her program seemed extremely well designed towards that. So it's utilizing her strengths really well. Like, I think her music for her free skate is Firebird. And when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, that's a tough piece of music. And it's a very fast paced piece of music. And I was worried she wasn't going to live up to it. But the way it's choreographed feels like it is using the stuff she has so far at this point in her career to the best possible way you can. I was just very impressed with how it was designed. You can feel like there was a lot of intent behind it. So she's looking good. She really is. But I do want to talk about Isabeau because you mentioned she was third at Cranberry Cup, second at Nebelhorn Trophy. Particularly at Cranberry Cup, she didn't look her best for sure. But at Nebelhorn, I thought she looked really strong, and I really like her new short program.
Isabeau is our reigning world silver medalist.
Yeah.
In that surprise second place finish at Worlds last year. And we caught a little bit of flack for underestimating her capabilities going into Worlds, because we were really concerned after the end of the Grand Prix series and Nationals, like how
it was never for lack of wanting her to succeed.
Yeah,
I promise.
we adore Isabeau, but we were kind of worried about her. Like her conditioning, her jumps were starting to show flaws. And then she showed that she has the grit and the talent, the skills, the work ethic to go out there and make it happen on the world stage. You know, what we're seeing in the early season is work to get these programs to function for her. Her first outing at Cranberry Cup, I don't know if the short program was an old program or something.
She's definitely changed it. The one she showed up with at Nebelhorn Trophy is brand new.
Yes, and light years better than what she had at Cranberry Cup. I mean, there was a fall in it and some places where it didn't look like she was entirely under the skin of it yet, because it was very new. But it's elegant. It suits her. The outfit is great.
It's such Audrey Hepburn vibes, and you can tell she just feels the sass of it. It's great.
It's got cheeky moments in it, and Isabeau really shines when she's able to deliver that classical style and then give it personality, because she does have such a bright personality, and she shows that so well in that program. So I really, really like that new short program. I'm slightly iffy on the free skate, and that might just be because I really don't like the costume for it. There's some Tinkerbellishness about it that doesn't work for me.
It's very fairy, and I get the reasoning behind it. That it's not my favorite, is what I'll say. But the program itself, I think, has promise. I'm hoping it gets better as we go along through the season. And who knows, maybe she'll change the dress too, which is, of course, based on our feedback alone, obviously.
But Isabeau has shown that she'll change outfits and stuff when she knows things aren't working. Yeah.
But it may be working for the judges, and their opinions are the ones that matter in terms of winning.
Yeah.
So.
The big thing for me is that I think that even though she clearly wasn't entirely satisfied with her performances at those two events, she looked like she was in a good mental place in how she handled. I mean, she is always like the best sport out there. But I felt like she was cognizant of not the best scores ever, but it is a progression towards being ready to be competitive for real on the Grand Prix circuit where it's going to matter more. And I think that she looks like she's in the right headspace for that.
Yeah, none of it gave me the like, oh no vibes at all.
On the podium at Lombardia Trophy in third place was our reigning world champion, our queen, Kaori Sakamoto. A third place finish at a challenger event isn't what you'd expect to see from her. But again, in the preseason or the early season, you're seeing a lot of kinks being worked out of things. You're seeing Kaori out there with blonde hair.
Love the blonde. Love it.
Blonde short hair, which looks fabulous on her. It's a whole vibe, and I dig it. Those programs felt a little watered down, a little safer. And characteristically of Kaori, she throws a jump or a jump combo like at the tail end of every free skate.
It's the triple loop at the end of the free.
It's always trouble for her, and she fell on it at Lombardia. So she came into third place with a 199.94, which is still a relatively strong score, but it was also a relatively strong competition there. So.
Right. I mean, it's far from what she's capable of in the 220s, maybe even 230. But she did not look worried, is what I will say. She very much, especially in that free skate, looked like she was still figuring out where everything went. You could feel the freshness and the newness of the program. And to give her lots of credit, Roheen Ward, she went back to him for at least her short program, I believe. But skating to a Roheen program as your choreographer is not easy. He is incredible as a choreographer and designs programs for people like Jason Brown for a reason. It's hard, it's complicated, and her programs are complex. So her needing some time to get used to them and dig into them and really feel solid in her skin makes perfect sense. And I do want to note that in her short program, she got 5s from 2 judges on GOE on her double axel, which does not happen. So that was it's a perfect score.
Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect double axel. And much like we were talking about with Isabeau, Kaori and Isabeau are 2 world medalists that we've seen here, and both of them are now veteran competitors. We can expect them to take what they have here and advance it significantly as the season goes along. So whatever flaws might be here, I am utterly unconcerned with, because both of them are going to be able to really level up these programs as the season progresses.
Also at Nebelhorn, coming in third, Hana Yoshida, who landed her triple axel in her free skate. I know she had done that last season, but it was great to see it back again. She did try it in the short, did not have success there, but it shows that she's continuing to try to push those boundaries for herself and add more difficulty where she can. And I liked her 2 new programs. I thought they looked good on her. I mean, it wasn't as strong as we've seen her in the past, especially the short, but her free skate was phenomenal.
Hana Yoshida was essentially my rookie of the year last season. She's a phenomenal skater. I think that she didn't look super confident coming out for that short program. She is normally so bright, so sunny, and she just looked a little unconfident in it as she came out. And when she finished it, you could tell that she was dissatisfied with her performance there. So I think that she does have some work to get that all together. But like you said, I mean, she's out there throwing triple axels. In just one season of senior international skating, she's already become this powerhouse fan favorite. I have every expectation that we're going to see her elevate those programs significantly as time goes along. So a 3rd place finish here at Nebelhorn is perfectly fine, and I expect great things for her.
So obviously those aren't the only people that competed, but want to keep us moving. But I do want to make a few special notes of people like Mona Chiba, who did not have her best outing at Nebelhorn, but looked solid. I think timid would also be a word I'd use.
Yeah.
However, I do want to point out her new program, especially her free skate, so beautiful. Love the choreography on her, and I think they have tons of potential.
We saw her compete at a smaller like summer event kind of early on, and she was spectacular there. Yeah. So, I have every confidence that Mona is going to really pull it all together, and it's going to look good this season.
Also looking to have a pretty strong start, Anastasia Gubanova, not her best, but 4th at Lombardia. Kimi Rapond was 6th at Nebelhorn. She had a great comeback from 10th to get back up to 6th place.
Yeah,
at
her
Nebelhorn.
Short program was a mess, but the free skate was sharp.
Yeah, it was really good. I have to make a special mention of Sarah Maud Dupuis for you, especially because I know you love her. She had a great short and a personal best at Nebelhorn.
Her short program at Nebelhorn was fabulous. I was so happy for Sarah Maud. She is not typically a higher level competitor. Her personal ceiling is quite a bit lower as far as what she can score technically, but she just always seems like she's such a wonderful, genuine person. And that short program there showcased her in a way that I have not seen before. Really confident, very clean skate, beautifully executed all the way through, and beat her international personal best by like 5 points. And yeah, she didn't do so great in the free skate afterwards, but that achievement for her there, I think, is a pretty big deal. And so I was really pleased to see that for her.
2 other people that were not at the Challenger Series events yet, but who we saw in earlier season, like I think they're more like regional, national competitions that I cannot wait to see more from are Yuna Aoki and Mai Mihara. Mai had, I wouldn't say the best performances by any means, but it's just always such a delight to see her. Yuna Aoki, however, man, I can't wait to see what she does this season. We saw her 2 new programs. They are gorgeous. She choreographed at least one of them. I just want to keep an eye on her. I really feel like we might see a surge into more podiums for her, possibly even on the Grand Prix Series this season.
Yuna Aoki blew my mind at Challenge Cup last year. I've just become such a big fan of her, and so I can't wait to see what she does next. Mai Mihara is one of my legitimate personal favorites, and so I am thrilled anytime that she's on the ice. I want to note that like her new programs, what we've seen of them, do look a little different for her, and also like her costuming is kind of new and unique for her, and I really dig it. I think it looks great, so I'm super excited for them.
And as you mentioned at the start of the show, there's so many people we haven't seen yet. We have not seen Cheon Kim, our reigning world bronze medalist. Luna Hendricks, the person I'm most excited to see right now this season, elyce-lin. Oh my God, am I excited to see elyce-lin. We saw like a peak at that, I cannot remember what it was called, but it was like a skating spectacular at the end of the US Champs Camp that they showed on a YouTube event. It was something in August. It was rough, but it was cool to see. And we got a little peek at where she's at and more. Just can't wait for more from her.
Yeah. And we haven't seen Wakaba Higuchi. We haven't seen Yelim Kim. We haven't seen Ekaterina Kurakova, although we've seen some posts from her on social media where it looks like she's getting some of her combos back in a real way. Hopefully she can execute in competition some of the stuff we've seen her doing in her new training camp because she shifted where she trains at. But those things looked really positive. So Yeah, and and
So
dozens
many
more,
more.
dozens more. We're barely scratching the surface to begin with here, but still a lot of great stuff so far.
All right, well, let's move into pairs because I have to say, Nebelhorn Trophy, especially the top two, was Hassan Volodin versus Stellato, Dudek, and Deschamps. And what a great way to get the early season going with 4 great programs, 2 from each. I was so impressed, especially like Hassan Volodin were just so solid, but Dudek and Deschamps just had so much vibe. Their confidence just looked way better than it did in the beginning of the season last year.
Hassan Volodin, I think were particularly impressive because they had to change their music fairly last minute because it's too much to get into, but a lot of the rules around how music can be used and licensing issues and how it gets done has changed a lot over the preseason, and that has affected a lot of people's programs as they've had to scramble to make changes.
I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a lot more over the season because we'll probably hear about it more from other teams.
Yeah, so Hassan Volodin had a significant musical change. Personally, I was into it. What they used and how they used it, I thought was really exciting. They looked way more polished than I would have expected this early in the season. The lifts were spectacular. Everything about how they were composed was really, really good.
I feel like the word crisp, like it feels like the right one for the vibe that they gave me. Like everything they did felt crisp.
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt like it was a perfect start to autumn.
Yeah.
Like there was something about it.
Yeah. And the vibes were super dramatic and I dug it. Yeah.
But Dudek and Deschamps, I mean, obviously I have a bias just because I love them so much, as so many of us do. Even though they were not perfect, especially their free was just a little messy. And then, for lack of a better term, they got screwed a little bit.
Because they went first.
They had to go first
in
the short.
And
you're the world champion.
Their short program was dynamite.
So good.
It was, again, so much better than I was expecting it to be at this point in time in the season. And yet, by the luck of the draw at that event, nothing was weighted towards the people how they had performed in the previous season.
Right.
So your world champions went first, which by the nature of this sport means that anybody who goes early tends to get underscored.
Right.
And that's definitely what happened to them there. And they knew, they were like, well, it's just the luck of the draw. We got stuck with it.
And it's unfair to say that it is unfair to them because I mean, it's completely fair because it was a random draw.
Yeah.
So just unfortunate, I guess is the word. However, I loved their material already this season. I don't think it's quite as powerful as especially their free skate.
Well, the interview with the Vampire program is one of those I think it's just going to end up being an iconic one because it is so well composed and so dramatic.
But I do feel like this season's free has the potential to be a more mature program. Like it feels just so well matched to both of their strengths. I just felt like they were both in it equally. Whereas sometimes last season, especially early on, I feel like it was a little harder for Maxime to get there the way like Deanna's just out there selling like a 1,000,000-watt smile, like out there and just like the intensity and all this stuff. And this one, I feel like it's really balanced. I feel like they just look great together.
I also think that their time, and this is, I think, true of a whole bunch of skaters, this summer show skate seasons, particularly with all the stuff that was happening in Japan and elsewhere, I think a lot of them got some super valuable performance time.
Yes.
That has changed and influenced the way they perform in competition now. And you can see it on the two of them in a big way.
Yeah, they feel so engaged with each other, with the audience. For as brilliant as they were last season, you could see them trying. And that wasn't a bad thing. It makes sense as to they were in the underdog position and trying to get their first world title, and they did. Now they feel like those seasoned veterans who are just coming out with that air of confidence behind them, and the self-doubt doesn't seem as prevalent. And it's just, I don't know, it was refreshing to see already.
Also refreshing back at Lombardia was to see the debut here from Conti and Machi.
Definitely.
From Italy, because they've had some rocky couple of seasons. Here, they looked way more cohesive than we've seen in a while. They looked more comfortable together. They were in a relationship. They broke up. That complicates the way that you work together. And this is the first time in a while where it seemed like all of that went away.
Yes.
Like they feel like a cohesive team on the same page together again. And while numerically they weren't quite up to say like Hassan Volodin at Nebelhorn, they took first at Lombardia with some really nice looking programs.
Absolutely. It was a big step ahead of where they were ever last season. And They even addressed what you mentioned about like the personal stuff. And, you know, we don't tend to dig into that stuff and because it's not our business, but they brought it up. Like, yeah, we needed to get past that. And it makes complete sense. I was really happy to see them bring out new material. And also,
oh my gosh, I was so over seeing those old programs last season.
Yes.
So new stuff here is so welcome.
Yes. But also at Lombardia, we saw our first look at Riku Mira and Ryuichi Kihara, our other favorites, and the 2022 world champions. They looked great. Love the material. Think this has tons of promise.
Short program was wonderful.
Short program was gorgeous. The long program was scary.
Yeah, they had a fairly terrifying fall in that free skate, and it left Ryuichi in obvious pain. Like even when they got to the kiss and cry, it was
he couldn't sit down.
He couldn't sit down. He was like, his body was literally like jerking in pain. It was very, very difficult to watch. We've already seen a couple of scary falls from people just in this early part of the season. You can see both in like pairs and in dance just how ambitious some of these lifts and these moves are. And with those challenging, ambitious maneuvers comes risk. And we definitely saw that here. I'm hoping Ryuichi is doing better post that. Because again, you know, I say it all the time, but I love this team so, so much. But they have really struggled with injury over the last season or so. And I'm hoping that this is something that he's able to get past really quickly.
Their coach, Bruno, said that it was something that I think he said a strain. But overall, they didn't expect it to be more than like a week or two off the ice for Ryuichi. So hopefully that has been the case and that Ryu's back in shape and not in pain. But I want to hone in on something you mentioned there about the complexity that we're seeing. And as we've already mentioned with even like going back to Kaori or to their lifts and to some of the stuff we're going to talk about in the dance, we're starting to see everybody pushing it a little bit harder. And you can feel that push towards like, oh, this is the season before the Olympic season. And it's already obvious, I think.
Yeah. You know, 2 years ago, coming out of the Olympics, we were terrified for the potential death of the pairs program.
Yeah.
Because it was so thin and lackluster at that time. And then over the course of that next season, and especially last season, we really saw a huge resurgence. And going into the season, seeing how strong so many performances are, how many people are leveling up their game, how much the landscape has changed over just the course of a couple of seasons. And now pairs is really exciting. You're seeing so many of these teams try harder stuff, really incredible, challenging lifts and throws and stuff. And even like the jump combos are like seem to be getting stronger.
They're coming back towards like what they were, I think, whenever Russia was a part of the competition. And Russian pairs was a legacy for reasons. You can't take anything away from that. And they brought more difficulty often to the competition, as did China. And now I'm starting to see that game come back where it's like, okay, everybody's leveling back up. We're not seeing throw doubles. We're not seeing as many side-by-side doubles. Like it's coming back around to that same level of excellence.
Yeah. And when I think about like technical teams, it does make me think of like the Hungarian team.
Absolutely.
Of Pavlova and Shevchenko. They're the team that aren't necessarily podium expectations at most events they're at, but they're so good and they're so consistent and reliable that they're always that team that's kind of hovering in fourth position that can tackle any spot on the podium if anybody else slips up.
Yep.
And what we've just seen from them at Lombardia is that kind of thing where like artistically, there's still some holes there, but their technical stuff looks really strong. Some of their lifts are really inventive and
just so confident.
Yeah.
Like they come out with fire.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Maria is fearless. You know, it is, I mean, and every pairs woman skater is. To do what they do, they have to be. But there's something specifically about Maria Pavlova that there is not a moment's hesitation in any of it. And their new programs are fun. They have a like Pirates of the Caribbean free skate that's actually pretty dope. I'm a little over that music and thematic at this point, but it looked good on them. So,
it felt like it fit. I have also been really relieved and happy to see the progression of Cam and O'Shea. Ellie Cam and Danny O'Shea, all last season we kept saying the same thing. They're beautiful together. She can't land a throw and they can't have a clean program. And as much as we saw progress and growth from them last year and so much promise, you weren't seeing that capitalization on the promise because you couldn't. So even though they were our national champions, something felt like, yeah, but they haven't had a clean program this season. However, that can't be said already this season. They were third at Nebelhorn. They had a fantastic short program there.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's such a huge evolution for them. Ellie's landings now are looking way stronger, way more elegant. That was a confident, beautiful program that showcases them, I think, for the first time in a real way, the talent and connection of that team.
And while there's no way to get around the fact that it was a very messy free skate there, that's okay, because unlike previous seasons from them that we've seen, they had mistakes in the middle and they came back at the end, as opposed to just sort of letting it go. They regrouped, especially Ellie, because I mean, she hasn't been a pair skater for very long. So to see her come back around, her confidence was very much on display. Like, okay, I made some mistakes. Now we're going to keep this going and end well. And I think that's what kept them on the podium there.
So, I mean, at Nebelhorn, their score of like 184.38 isn't anything to write home about, really. But it's not about the numbers game there. It's much more about how great that short program was and just seeing that steady evolution to keep them in the conversation. And I'm so excited for the growth of that team, despite the problems they had there, and particularly for Ellie, because I think the improvement is very visible.
I also don't want to discount the evolution of, I'm hoping I'm going to say their names right, because they're a relatively new team, Alicia Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov. They were, I believe, silver medalists at this past year's U.S. Championships. They came in fourth at Nebelhorn and second to Cam and O'Shea at the John Nix Pairs Challenge so far this season. And while their scores are also, like, to your point, not necessarily anything to write home about, I do feel like we've seen progress from them. And especially with the U.S. having such a iffy pairs discipline camp right now, kind of if you look at all the teams and what they're going to bring to it, it's been nice to see them start to step forward.
Yeah, I mean, Misha is an extremely competent partner, and Alyssa, she really has grace alongside of fire and strong technical capability. It wasn't super clean so far here, but I think they are a team with a ton of potential. They're still kind of getting it all together, but there's a lot of good stuff there. So really looking forward to seeing what else they do this season.
But there's also quite a few we haven't seen. Personally, we haven't seen the two Italian teams. I think Gilardi and Ambrosini have competed, but we have not personally seen their performances yet. Bakari and Guarisi, obviously, Gulibova and Giotopoulos Moore had a great season last year. Looking forward to more from them. Obviously, you can never count out Medalkina and Brulava.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They could be your favorites this season. Who knows? They were amongst the top last season. And on the U.S. side, we have Chan and Howie, who haven't seen yet. But I am most excited to see, and I haven't heard when we're going to see it, the new team of Balazs Nagy and Audrey Shin.
Yeah, we talked about this in the Shelled episodes that never got released over the summer, but that was a pairing that we predicted before, I mean, even before the end of the season last year, whenever Audrey Shin had said that she was throwing her hat into the pairs thing, what we were talking about is like, well, at the time, Balazs was with Chelsea Liu, but she was really, really struggling despite being probably the best skater in the air. And, you know, we were talking then, we're like, a pairing that could really make sense would be Balazs and Audrey. Audrey has so much star power, but she was just never consistent enough or technical enough to compete with the top of the American women. But as a pair skater, what we've seen from her so far is already really exciting, but whether or not they're quite ready to be in competition yet, I don't know. But hopefully we will see them for real sometime here soon. But I'm very excited for it.
Very, very excited. Well, let's move into the men's, where I'm just going to say I was not prepared. I was not prepared for Lombardia Trophy early season competition to have a head-to-head between Ilya Malinin and Yuma Kagiyama already. And oh my God, was it good. I was so happy.
Oh my gosh. To have a rematch of our 1 and 2 world, medalists right at the beginning of the season is crazy.
It was so awesome.
Ilya here, there's nothing new to the discussion of his extraordinary technical prowess versus his need for growth and artistry. But what I think we saw in both of those programs, there was a huge improvement in that artistic aspect of his skating. These programs, for being brand new, are already really complete looking. They're exciting. They're super crowd engaging. They're full of technical fireworks. I mean, because the backflip, the somersault is now legal starting this season. As of this summer, that controversial rules change. Of course, Ilya now has a backflip, but notably a beautiful cartwheeling backflip that looks a lot more artistic than your just standard feet overhead backflip that we see sometimes in exhibitions or, in competition if we're talking Adam Shaw and Fa. Ilya used that to wonderful effect in his programs here. They're just really well put together.
Yes. And while we could sit here and nitpick on skating skills and edge work and all this stuff, you cannot deny the level of compelling choreography that he is selling. It's not even necessarily that it's the absolute best choreography, in quotes, for anyone. It's that it's the best for him. For the state of his current skating, I feel like he sold the living hell out of it. All of the, to your point earlier about tours and what it can do for a skater. He is so deeply connected to that audience. He wants the big reaction. He wants to thrill, and you feel it from him, and he is feeding off of their energy. That arena for the Lombardia was like standing room only. There was like so many people crammed in there. You could feel that for a skating competition, that doesn't happen very often anymore. And the people there knew what they were about to see. Like you had Yuma Kageyama versus Ilya Malinin. And in the skating world, it doesn't get more peak than that. And it was just thrilling, especially his free skate was one of those that first time out, I'm like, how's anyone possibly going to beat that?
Especially when you look at the fact that he got a 3:12.55 in his first appearance in the season. 3:12.55 in a challenger.
It was ridiculous.
It's obnoxious.
But I want to move on to Yuma because I do not want to discount the brilliance of Yuma Kageyama. His short program is my favorite already. It is so good. His short program, by the end of it, I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was so beautiful. You can see how much effort he is putting into making the quality of his skating improve. You can feel the work he's put in with Karolina Kostner. You can see how much effort he is making to every inch of the ice being covered has intent. There is something so magical about the way he did that program in particular to me. His free skate still felt a little bit more new.
It felt a bit raw.
Yeah. And he had a few small errors, nothing too major. But again, for a Challenger Cup performance, first for the season, he got a 291.54. We know he is capable of bigger numbers than that, but that is still a humongous number.
I really felt like those programs were not necessarily watered down, but they were not at his full firepower because that wasn't the point yet. The point was trying to get the details down, to get the feeling down, to get the flow down. And what we saw from Yuma last year was a very careful, very strategic ramp up as the season went along because he was returning from injury.
Exactly.
But that worked so well for him last season that I would imagine that his team has said, don't try to go out there guns blazing. Don't try to match an Ilya Malinin technical here. Deliver great programs that set a foundation for the rest of the season. Absolutely. And I really think that's what he was doing there.
That's a really good way to put it. I like that a lot. And I cannot wait to see his short program again.
Yeah. And not for nothing, Ilya also didn't throw a quad axel here. So he and Yuma were both holding back some of those big elements.
Yeah.
But let's not discount the third place finish there from Japan's Shun Sato.
I'll never get past what Cal Mura said about the fear of Shun
last
season. And I feel like in this performance, he placed the fear of Shun into a lot of other men.
We've talked a lot about how Shun is that guy who has all the technical, all the consistency, but he doesn't have the star power and he's never seemed to have quite infused personality into his programs. They can just feel a little lacking in identity despite how good of a skater he is. And I think for the first time here, we started seeing programs that are showing an evolution in Shun where that identity is starting to be formed. And they've clearly put in some work in the off season to grow him into something beyond just a consistent, competent skater.
Agreed. I don't know if this is his goal for the year, but to me, we have to see Shun Sato at Worlds this coming March, because last year not having him there almost felt unfair, but he was so consistent last season. And I can't help but think he and his team went back and were like, okay, what is that thing that is holding me back? What is that thing? And it is that it factor, for lack of a better term. It's how do we feel about the programs? And frankly, oftentimes with Shun, you'd feel like, wow, that was amazing, but you wouldn't necessarily feel any emotional response. And I feel like he's getting there. He's moving towards that. I think he spent some of the off season working with Guillaume Cizeron, which if you're going to infuse emotion into your programs, I can't imagine a better person to work with. So hopefully that's what we're seeing, is that continued effort to build an identity on ice, because Shun has some of my favorite jumps. His technique, I just love that quick way he gets into the air. Like there's just such a great snap into it. His beautiful line. I think there's tons of promise there. So I'm excited to see Shun this season, and I hope he makes it to the world team.
Yeah. And then going on in the trend of talking about Japanese skaters, and this is, not for nothing, our first season post Shoma Uno's retirement, right? So, we have
not okay.
One of the, the greats of the Japanese men has now left the field, which opens up more opportunities for that other incredibly deep field of Japanese men, one of which is one of my personal faves, Sota Yamamoto. We just saw him win Nebelhorn, not with a great number. He won it at 262.72. It was a softer competition.
But a great free skate.
Beautiful free skate. His short had some problems for sure, because he was in third after the short. But that free skate is dynamic. And also, neither of these programs look or feel like anything we've really seen Sota do before.
Yeah, you didn't feel the fist bump energy. Like you felt like a more mature, more complete Sota.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to see it.
And I like Sota Yamamoto's rock and roll nature. I've always been a big fan of that. But what we're seeing here is an effort to move into more artistry, more maturity, more nuance and depth. And I dig it. It's a sidebar, but the men's podium there stayed consistent between the short and the long as far as who was on it. And
but flipped.
But flipped. But the dynamic of those three guys together was between him, Denis Vasiliev, and Gabriel Frangipani was super adorable. They were really, really fun together.
Oh, and don't forget.
Well, and my favorite part is that at the press conference afterwards, Sota doesn't speak good English, so he needed an interpreter, and I guess they didn't have anybody there to do it. So they tapped in Hana Yoshida to come in during the men's press conference and be up on stage and act as his interpreter, which is adorable. And just the photos of seeing those three guys up there with Hana Yoshida, I got such a kick out of that. It just really, I thought it was so fun. So I really dug that.
It was very fun. At Nebelhorn, we also got our first glimpse at the master of drama himself, Junwon Cha. He was not, unfortunately, the master of much else that day, at least for his short, where he placed 10th. And it was one of the weakest, I'd say, I've seen his short programs look in a while. However, I like the choreo and I like the music. So I'm just going to take it as it was just a bad day.
I mean, it was better than the start of his season last season.
That's fair.
Because when he couldn't land an axle and his programs were a complete mess. He had a really bad fall, and Jun Won-cha is not a good faller. If he goes down, it tends to be pretty problematic. But his free skate was redemptive.
Redemptive is mild. I will call it euphoric. It was so beautiful. I'm a huge Jun Won-cha fan, so I cannot contain myself whenever I see him put in all that drama that he brings to everything, and it works out. And that one really worked out very well. So I'm very curious to see how especially his free evolves throughout the season.
I mean, he's one of the best men's artistic skaters.
Oh, he's so good.
That free skate already looks absolutely gorgeous. He just has to tighten things up and get his conditioning in, because he could clearly was struggling with his conditioning, with not being completely blown out by the end of it. So there's some work to be done there. But, you know, he jumped up to fourth. He was third in the free skate. It was a good, again, redemptive skate there. And I think we have a lot of great stuff ahead from him.
I hope so. I also hope we see some redemption soon from Kao Miura. We saw his first effort at Lombardia. He came in fourth, not the worst ever.
Yeah, but a pretty trash score.
It was a pretty trash score, and it was even by his own standards, because I saw some quotes from him later, like, in his words, I think basically the summary was there wasn't much good about that other than I look like I know how to skate-ish. It's hard to even say if the programs will be good or not yet, just because it looked like old Kao.
Yeah.
It looked wild. It looked too frenetic. And his intensity is what I love about Kao. So I'm sure he'll get it reined in, but it did look really messy. So I'm just going to sort of hold on any opinions yet until the next time.
And my takeaway from it is that, much like I was talking about earlier with like Isabeau, with Kao here, even though he had poor performances, he looked like he was handling it well emotionally, because we can see that Kao is really hard on himself when he doesn't do well. And this particular event, he seemed to accept that it just hadn't worked out very well, and that he knows he has a lot to work on. And I think that is a positive, because I think that will set him up for improvement in a good way.
That's fair. To your point earlier about the two other guys on the Nebelhorn podium, Gabriel Frangipani, who was second in the short and in the free, is solid. He looked good for this point in the season. I don't know that I'd say his programs were like the most memorable just yet, but still, he looked really strong.
Frangipani, he's got limitations with his technical. His ceiling is not nearly as high as the top level guys. But over the last couple of seasons, I've just really enjoyed watching him. I like his artistic flair. I like what he brings to the skates. I mean, he's a more of middle of the pack kind of skater, but I enjoy his energy, and I liked these programs. I enjoyed him here.
I really liked seeing Denis Vasilyev's name at the top of the short program listings. That was a pleasant surprise, since he hasn't typically landed there in quite a while. His free, not quite as strong. It landed him third overall, but I really like his two new programs and his increased dismissal of what the judges have to say. It's almost like this casual disregard. Like, I'm here, I'm doing my thing. You think what you want. I don't really care. Whatever. There's something great about it.
Denis has been very open that he is skating for the audience, that his programs are tailored to the audience, that he cares more about the impact that he has in the arena rather than necessarily what the judges give him. That's not necessarily a equation that leads to success in competition, but it will keep you a fan favorite. And Denis is definitely a fan favorite. And,
he's amazing.
And he was great to watch here.
He was. Just putting a pin in, this is not the last time you're going to hear his name this episode, but Roman Sadovsky. Oh my gosh. What a delight it has been to see Roman Sadovsky this season so far.
We saw him a little bit at Cranberry Cup, and then at Nebelhorn, he landed in fifth, solidly middle of the top 10, but a very good performance for him overall. He had such a mess of a season last year where half the time he couldn't even compete for various reasons. And here, he almost had a clean free skate.
It was so close.
And that free skate is gorgeous.
It's so good. And it's one of those things where you're watching it like, I know you're not going to beat a lot of the guys here because your technical content just isn't as high. But, oh, what a joy to watch. The only fall he had in that free skate was on his last spin, just due to sheer exhaustion because his conditioning isn't there yet. But damn it, it was so good.
Yeah, and his short program, which is a carryover from last season because he barely got to use it.
Yes, love it.
Is also wonderful, and it looked much more fully realized here. It is always the reminder with Roman that he is somebody that, again, doesn't have the point ceiling to be super competitive. And he is wildly inconsistent and sometimes can throw away entire programs when something goes wrong. But the guy has grace and artistry. And when it's all put together, he can be thrilling. And what we saw with that free skate there was a really thrilling program. So my hope is that we see a glow up from Roman this season where he gets it together and actually becomes competitive.
I really, really hope so. I was so happy to see it. A few others of note just would be Jimmy Ma, who came in third at Cranberry Cup, sixth at Lombardia. So not like the biggest results, but for Jimmy, that feels like a pretty solid start. And his free program, especially at Cranberry Cup, looked really good. So I'm just always so delighted to see him. So whenever he has any success, I'm just happy.
Absolutely, yeah. Also, a Cranberry Cup win for Lucas Brassard. Again, not big numbers, but a nice vote of confidence for him starting off the season. That's a nice medal to put around his shoulders.
So a few we have not seen yet. Adam Xiaohim Fa, the aforementioned backflipper of note, who we adore. He had an injury, so was not going to be competing in the Challenger Series early on. He'll be back, though, at Grand Prix de France. So it's not too much longer before we'll be seeing him, and cannot wait to see what he's bringing out this year.
We have not personally yet seen Kevin Amos. We know that as of this recording, there is a smaller French competition going on. And I believe Kevin has really underperformed at that particular event. I think he was in like 7th or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know the specifics of that other than it hasn't been very good. We know last season was essentially a wash by the time we got to the end of the Grand Prix after he started so brilliantly at Skate America last year. So my hope is that Kevin shrugs off whatever happened there and that he comes back looking more like his old self.
Hopefully. I can't wait to see better days for him.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jason Brown, can't wait to see him. And we are going to see him sooner because he is skating on the Grand Prix series this year.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was super disappointed that we didn't see more than a couple of performances out of Jason. You know, he really only went to like a Challenger Series event last year and then US Nationals and Worlds.
Yeah.
And yet he still landed on the podium at US Nationals. And
is in the top 6 in the world.
Right. Yeah. Because he's extraordinary. But I would really love to see more out of him. And clearly he recognized that he needed to spend more time in competition. And I believe he's returned to that one program from Rohim that is a more complicated piece. So he's definitely going to need to be in condition because Rohim did not go easy on him.
No, he did not. Others that we're looking forward to, the return of Matteo Rizzo following his surgery. Can't wait to see him come back. Let's see what Lukas Britschke brings to the table this season because he did so well last year.
And last season's fan breakout, Mikhail Shadorov.
Absolutely.
Who was so exciting and also spent a lot of time on the show skate circuit this summer, which I hope will really have informed his work because he is such a promising young skater.
Yeah. And, dozens more. So let's finish this up with dance. And that actually is the discipline that I feel like we've seen the fewest of the top teams at this point.
It's been a interesting mix of programs that already look pretty great, programs that are a bit head scratcher-y, and also just a rhythm dance thematic this season that there's a lot of stuff that I am, not a huge fan of and expect to get really tired of very quickly. Also, why did everybody pick Dune this season across all the freaking disciplines?
Oh, I mean, it's the season of Dune.
It's the season of Dune. And, that music is cool. I mean, I'm a huge sci-fi fan, but I don't care about Dune, so I didn't watch the movies. That could impact why I have such a dismissive feeling about the music. But it just seems like it was so in the zeitgeist for so many of the skaters. And I feel like we're going to get really sick of that music fairly quickly into the season.
However, I want to focus on the thing you mentioned before because I'm not going to lie, really don't like this season's rhythm dance theme. I am trying, and there are definitely some rhythm dances already that I do like.
There's some bright spots for sure.
There sure are, but there are also some like, oh my God, why? moments that
There's
I'm having.
There's going to be some suffering through some programs as we go along. But I think the first ones to start off with are our world bronze medalists, the Italian team of Guinard and Fabry. They took first place at Lombardia.
Oh, by a mile.
By a mile. I mean, it was no contest there for them. And they are a wonderful team. Their rhythm dance is actually pretty entertaining. I think
cute.
It really suits them very well. In particular, the outfit and just vibe of it, like, just looks so good on Charlene. Like, she's so adorable in it that despite it not being musically like my favorite thing, I think it suits them really well.
Agreed.
But I really have to side eye the free dance right now because I don't know what's going on there.
You and I have talked a lot about this program since watching it. And part of the problem is that they're using their costumes from their exhibition robot number that they've been doing for the past year or so.
Yeah.
And it was hard to disconnect that exhibition because they did it so much last year with this program. There's also the fact that those costumes feel like they were appropriate for exhibition, but in context of this new program, nothing worked to me. At least something about it, just there was no connection. And while there was still that techie sci-fi kind of vibe to it as well, so I get why they used those costumes, I am really, really hoping those are going to change by the next time we see them.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's just a temporary. And certainly at this stage of the Challenger series, we've seen a lot of people competing in temporary outfits and stuff. That's not unusual. So it might have just been them saying, hey, we already have these things. Sure. Let's just go with them. They clearly really like them.
Right. But it made it hard to focus on the program itself.
Yeah.
It was just distracting.
I'm going to run with the assumption that that is not a finished aesthetic for all of that yet, and that I hope that it comes together a little bit better. But so far, that free skate really doesn't impress me, and so I'm hoping for better from them.
It's technically fine. I don't have any problems with that. There's some cool lifts. They're always inventive with their lifts, but there is no emotional component whatsoever.
No, and they are such a technically and emotionally effective team, generally speaking, that to have a program that feels as cold as that one is unfortunate. So hopefully we'll see better.
Yes. At Nebelhorn, we had a first place for Fear and Gibson. Again, not a surprise at all, and certainly ran away with it. I will say I really liked this rhythm dance. I thought that suited them really well. Very disco-y vibes.
Yeah. It fits their sense of fun really well.
I felt like it fit them like a glove. Their Beyonce free skate, I have no problem with it. I just feel like it's forgettable.
Yeah, my struggle with that one is that last season, love it or hate it, and I was real ambivalent towards it, the Rocky number towards the beginning of the season, but by the end of it, I was on board. It had so much identity, it had so much story, it was so unique to them. Like, it was like you couldn't have imagined another team delivering that program. And that's one of those things I love in ice dance, when you have those programs that you can see and go, nobody else can do this except for you. And then to go into this season, riding off all of that, and this free dance, it's technically super well executed. The music's fine. I don't find it super exciting, but it's okay. But it just utterly lacks that sense of identity and uniqueness that they had at the end of last season.
I agree.
And I don't know if it is a concession to that sense of, well, if you want to get on the podium, you need to be a little less kitsch than you were last year. There's still, obviously room for it to change and evolve. But right now, I just look at it and think it feels like a step down from last year.
I feel like it's very safe. And them choosing Beyonce makes perfect sense, especially with Worlds being in the US.
Sure.
It's not even the music choice. It's just their interpretation. They're not a generic team, and yet something about the delivery of that program so far feels a little generic. And I say that as a fan of theirs. Like, I really like them. I just think they could bring more to it, and I hope that it evolves as we see it go throughout the season.
Yeah, and don't take this as any disrespect towards Beyonce. I have more than a dozen times enjoyed dancing in my living room to Crazy in Love or Halo or like lots of her repertoire. Something about the way it's constructed there and the dance to it, I don't feel like what they're doing connects to the music in any specifically notable way. So I haven't found my way emotionally to it for a group that I feel is generally more inventive than that.
I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping that they bring it. But in second at Nebelhorn, Karen Ponomarenko, what I found interesting is that their rhythm dance was definitely amongst them that I was sort of ambivalent to. Like, it's fine, but it's not memorable.
No.
However, their Carmen, man, I did not like the costumes, but I love that program.
Yes.
It is so good.
Yeah, they look spectacular in that free dance. They really make the emotional storytelling really work. It's sexy.
Yes.
They really ramp up that. Like, It's a little randy
Yeah.
in that program in a way that I think particularly Christina sells super well.
She does.
I agree that I really don't like their outfits for it.
They're just so brown.
They're so brown, and
that's not bad. It's just it's like especially Anthony's muddy uniform, and I get the thematic connection there,
but it doesn't flatter them.
No, it doesn't look right on them.
Yeah, and so I think that aesthetically hurts the appearance of things a little bit.
But it doesn't take away from how great that program is.
But the performance is awesome. I'm like so excited to see, and again, comparing that to the first place finish for Fear and Gibson, where I felt like their free dance didn't have any identity. I felt like with Kurt and Pomerenko, I watched a 4.5-minute movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I also really want to highlight Zingis and Kolsnik here. I feel like their two programs here have leveled them up, especially their free dance. I really do actually like their rhythm dance a lot. I think it serves especially Amelia's like foundation in single skating really well. Like her kind of bouncy nature goes well with the music, but their free dance is star making.
I am traditionally a little neutral on this team. I tend to like that aggressive acrobatic nature of Zingis. There's some of the stuff that she does, like you said, that clearly comes from her singles background, that is aggressive in a way that looks almost like stuff that you'll see from the men's single skaters sometimes. And it's really cool. And Vadim is obviously
very good,
really, really talented. But in general, I never do see the identity a whole lot in their stuff. And here in the rhythm dance, it's quite good. It suits them, but it doesn't stand out as memorable to me. But I was wildly surprised by that free dance. It was really, really good. That kind of changed. I know I've been speaking in very kind of cold, neutral language about them until this point, but like that free dance was fabulous. I was so surprised at my own reaction to it.
Especially the second half. It just builds and builds and builds.
Utterly surprised. I'm really excited to see how that evolves, because the lack of storytelling is what I've always kind of seen from them. And here they took me on a ride and I was into it. So yeah, I'm really stoked about that free dance.
It's phenomenal. Other teams we've seen, Tasharov and Tasha were at Nebelhorn. They came in fourth there. Had a really, I'd say, strong, if not, again, memorable rhythm dance. Their free, it was a bit messy. And I think their free is the better of the two programs. They're just not there yet, I guess is the easy way to put it.
I love the Toshler siblings. I really like what they bring to the table. I enjoy their lifts. I enjoy their vibe. Not the greatest showing from them. There's still a lot of work to be done on those programs, but I have a lot of confidence that they're going to crank it up as well.
Yeah, this just felt like an early season bit messy. Smart and Deke, I very much like their rhythm dance. I think they might be amongst the top of the teams that produce something out of the theme that I really don't like, but I'm into. And it just suits them. It really does. And man, does Tim look straight out of like a 70s like movie. It's weird.
Their look is really strong.
Perfect.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
But oh my gosh, did they have a scary fall in their free skate.
We were talking about that earlier with Riku and Ryuichi, where you get these ambitious lifts.
Such an ambitious lift.
It's scary. Whatever they were doing in this one that didn't work, it was clearly super challenging. It didn't work. It flopped them both. I mean, he essentially kind of suplexed her, and they landed both really hard on their backs. She popped up very resiliently for it, but it obviously took a greater toll on him. And they also, like, she had some troubles in the twizzle sequence.
They both did.
Yeah, and so there was some struggles in there. And
I think the program is good, though.
It is a good program. I think that when it had all of the wind in its sails, that it looked really strong. I don't like the little headpiece on her, and the outfits are maybe a little odd, but
it's Dune.
Again, it's freaking Dune. But still, there was a lot going on there that I was into, and I like this team an awful lot. And it's tough to watch a team sit in the kiss and cry so clearly dissatisfied with what's happened, particularly when I feel like I sort of know this team better in the sense of like, because of their social media presence. Like I know more
I just
of them.
adore them. Yeah.
Again, I have every confidence that that's going to get fixed up. But that lift may need to go. They might need to change that into something else, because it feels, if they can get it together, it's going to be great.
That's the thing.
Like, but it scares me.
It does scare me. But the judges have also been so iffy. Like, I feel like it goes back and forth. Some judges seem to really like this team. Some really seem to dismiss them, and having moves like that are so challenging might be the way in of like people taking them more seriously. I don't know. I was a little bummed last year by some of the scores that they got. Like I felt like they were underscored at all.
Always underscored. I've never understood it.
And I also I've never understood the overall contention that this is not a good pairing. Like, I feel like they're a great team and they bring out something completely new in each other. And it's really exciting to see for two seasoned veterans of ice dance coming together and bringing out something new and fresh. I like their vibe a lot together. So I'm just really hoping that they can figure out what that recipe for success is, because I think there's so much there.
A team that honestly surprised the heck out of me at Lombardia here is the very new team of Morozov and Chen. Jeffrey Chen has gone through a bunch of different partners over the course of a number of seasons, has often seemed to struggle to get beyond a very kind of junior level. And with no disrespect to him or his partners, a lot of times they just felt very third string, non-competitive kinds of teams. I wasn't familiar with Morozov previously. You know, she is new to the country, to, you know, the American program, but man, she has star power. Like,
she's really good.
She's really engaging. And I feel like she has forced Jeffrey to up his game to bring that kind of energy and excitement to the ice. And while there's clearly a lot of technical advancement that they need to do, they showed up really well at Lombardia and strong enough.
Surprisingly well.
I mean, they beat Nisset and Markelov, who are
that
like
shocked me.
The darlings of the junior circuit last season.
The reigning junior world champions.
Yeah.
Like, incredible team.
Yeah. I can't speak to all of the technical stuff. I haven't seen yet enough of them as a team to kind of gauge what their ceiling is. But I found them to be really entertaining there.
Surprisingly so. And I mean, I know that Jeffrey's gone through a lot of partners, and so we'll see how this goes. I'm hopeful because I agree with you. I feel like Morozov really shined so bright out there, and she is forcing him to improve. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take that as a wait and see, but I was very impressed with what I saw so far. But Nisset and Markelov, to be fair, who came in third behind them at Lombardia, had some problems. Like their twizzles, just especially for Markelov, like he just seemed off the whole time. And for a team that is usually so resoundingly solid and just seems to get better every time you see them, this was surprising. And granted, we're talking about early season competitions, so that could all change, but it looked off.
The thing that's wild about Nisset and Markelov is that they did, as you would expect from this team, as we've seen from them over the course of their career in juniors, their lifts are insane.
Oh, yeah.
And
her flexibility is crazy.
Right. The absolutely wild technical things that they do, the challenge level of it, like just the sheer difficulty of what they do is nuts. But they tend to make mistakes on the easier things.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's funny. It's like, even when you go into the twizzle sequences, they have elements that are really, really challenging that they do great. And then they slip up on the more common, it's not that any of it's easy, but that the slightly easier stuff. I don't know if that is just a huge focus on the big hard elements and then they let slip on some of those other things, or if Markelov was just having a bad weekend or whatever. But there were definitely holes in the performances here, and those programs don't feel finished yet.
They don't. They're good,
they're
not finished.
But the fireworks are there, though, when it comes to their big flashy elements, because some of the stuff they do is just pretty astounding.
Very much so. And this is, to be fair to them, their first season as seniors. So we'll see how it goes. I do want to run through a few more, because I know we've talked a lot about this and we don't have specific competitions we're really focused on.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of people.
There's so many. So others of note, we did see in an early Lake Placid competition, the Lake Placid International in July, Laurent and Lega from Canada, they came in with a 191.19, which is a nice score for them. I admit I was not that in love with either of their programs for as much as I love that team. So I'm hoping that it was just, it's July, still summertime. It'll get better.
Yeah. The only thing I really remember from that one is them sort of stealing one of the Toshler siblings' signature
lift.
But doing it sort of in reverse.
They made it their own.
Yeah.
They did something similar.
Yeah.
But I do love this team. They're so inventive in their own right. The Brown siblings actually came in silver there. And I really liked both of their programs. It felt like a nice, solid step forward for them in terms of the maturity.
Yeah. One of the struggles with Una and Gage is just that despite all of their strengths, they can be a little one note and their aesthetic choices are often very plain. And I feel like that has improved just a little bit that we've seen so far this season. So I really like that team. And so
especially Gage is such a star.
Yeah. But I mean, her knees, like,
oh my God, their edge work is beautiful.
The stuff that Una can do, like, is
it's
so
nothing
impressive.
Taking away from Una. It's just, I feel like his charisma level is coming out faster.
That's fair, for sure.
And then we also saw Peyton Bai there. I actually think their rhythm dance is so on point for their personalities. Like, theirs might fit them the best as like a team. And then they didn't medal, but Flores and Dostoyev, this team is so good. And I really hope we see them move forward soon. Like they were 5th at this international competition. I think they placed 7th or 8th at US Nationals last year, but they have so much promise. Isabella Flores is such a social media star, but she's also a beautiful skater and they're just so aggressive.
Yeah.
I just feel like their style, it hits for me at least. So I'm looking forward to their evolution.
They have a level of attack in their skating style that I just don't see from really any of the other ice dancers. Clearly, they have artistic levels and technical things that they have yet to entirely impress judges with. I just always enjoy the heck out of every program that they do. I like that team and their style a lot. So I'm hoping for glow up.
And as we mentioned at the beginning of this like discipline discussion, we haven't seen a lot of the top teams yet. So we're still waiting for the launch of Chalk and Bates, Gillis and Poirier, Lajoie and Lagat, Tequila and Versluis, Vried and Amber-Levicius. Some of the top teams in the world we have not seen yet. So we have lots of things to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen, Hana Lim and Ye Kwan other than just like tiny bits of hints on social media of what they're going to be doing. And, Reed and Amber-Levicius were gold in my heart last year for the whole season. I can't wait to see what they do next. And I don't have a clue. I have no idea what's coming from them yet.
I can't wait to see what the rhythm dance from La Pareva and Brasseau looks like.
Oh my gosh.
I loved their rhythm dance so much last year. Both their programs were great, but that rhythm dance was maybe my favorite. So I'm really excited to see what they bring to the table this year.
Yeah, there's still so much to come. We're so early right now. And, we're still weeks away from Skate America, where we get our first look at the actual Grand Prix. So there's definitely some of these teams, especially the veteran teams, we won't see until we hit the Grand Prix. So there's a lot to wait for. But
let's go to our favorite segment, Who's Gold in Your Heart?
I hadn't really thought about this ahead of the recording. So I'm just going to have to go with my gut after everything we talked about here. And I'm going to say for this set of competitions, despite my own surprise at it, I'm going to say that Gold in My Heart is actually Zingis and Kolsnik.
Ooh.
Just because their free skate really knocked me out. That free dance, and maybe it's one of those like the first time when, somebody that you haven't been all that interested in before then suddenly really makes themselves noticeable. That's what it felt like for me. That's one of the things that I remember most clearly off of all of these performances. So yeah, Zingis and Kolsnik are gold in my heart for this one.
It's a great choice. I can't wait to see more. Mine, the aforementioned Roman Sadovsky. I told you you'd hear about him again. I am just this sounds so maternal and gross, but proud of him.
Oh, no.
I'm like, come on. We've been watching Roman have so many issues. He had so many luggage issues. He had so many travel problems. He couldn't skate a clean program for like so long. And then he drops that beautiful free skate at Nebelhorn. I was just so happy and relieved to see what his potential looked like again. We've been waiting for this. And to be fair to him, at Worlds last year, he wasn't terrible. He did a really strong job for someone who had not been competing all season. Like I think had 1 or 2 maybe competitions. So I'm just very excited. Maybe that's a better way to put it for what the future brings for Roman Sadovsky. hopefully he'll regain his Canadian title again. That's my hope for him.
Well, that wraps us up for this episode. I struggle to kind of keep track of all the stuff that is happening in what I think of as kind of the preseason. I know the season is actually happening now, but it's like until the Grand Prix actually happens, everything feels preseason. Yes, I mean, I know there's a lot of other small competitions. There's lots of little events happening all over the place. There's just so many people left to see. So it's hard to evaluate where the season is going just yet.
Right. But we'll be back next with the Shanghai Trophy and the Dennis 10 Memorial Cup, both of which are happening this coming week. So we'll have more to talk about very soon.
So until that happens, all things Scoreography are in the comments here on YouTube, or otherwise you can go to our website at scoreography.show. But we would love for you guys to join us in this discussion. Tell us who you're most excited about so far this season. What has you hyped? What's got you concerned? Who is gold in your heart so far in the preseason? Yeah, and then look forward to the next episode as we talk about those upcoming events.
That you won't remember happening until I remind you.
That's just how our life works. You guys think that's at home, you're just like, why? Adrian can't remember what the events are? I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is our day to day. Like, I don't know what's happening most of the time unless it's written on a dry erase board right in front of me where I see it 3 times a day. Otherwise, I don't know where I'm going. She just steers me there and says, that's what we're doing. And I'm like, sure, I'm going to guess that you told me that already 5 or 6 times. I'm very ADHD.
And with that.
Right, yeah. So for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we will talk to you next time.
Bye.